What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and today on the show, I'm going to be talking about all the spoilers for Alien Romulus. If you haven't already, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Go check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Also, wherever you get your podcast, drop in and leave us a good review there as well. So if you're watching this video and you haven't seen my spoiler-free review of Alien Romulus, definitely go check that out now, and then come back and watch this one. So, because I'm going to be talking about all the spoilers in this, I'm just going to be going in between different things, just kind of my thoughts, what maybe could have been done differently. So, to kick things off, we're going to be talking about probably the most talked about thing in this movie. One of the most divisive things about the movie is bringing Ian Holm back for this movie posthumously as Rook. Everybody knows that he played Ash in the original Alien from 1979, and a lot of people have problems with this, because he's been dead for a number of years at this point. Apparently, Fede Alvarez in the studios went out and got his family's permission. Apparently, they were saying that he had troubles getting roles throughout, the back half of his career or after Alien. He had just had trouble getting roles in general. So they thought it would have been nice for him to be portrayed in this movie to kind of have another shot, I guess. And I can understand where a lot of people are coming from. I personally, it did kind of take me out of the movie, to be honest. Didn't really see much reason for him to be in there other than to be just like, oh, hey, it's that guy from the original Alien. Now, I do know that there are times in the Alien franchise or in the Alien universe, they have certain specific models of these synthetics, of these androids. We've seen that with, David and Walter. I believe it's happened with Wayland at a couple points in the Alien franchise. It's been a while since I've seen like AVP and whatnot. They do have certain models that look the same. So I can understand that from like maybe an in-universe standpoint that they had that one specific model of synthetic or android that looked like Ian Holmes. I can understand that, but at the same time, him being in this movie doesn't impact the story whatsoever. In fact, I think it kind of hurts it in a way because in the original Alien movie with Ash, the first time that you see it, you don't know what his intentions are. You don't know that he's going to end up turning on the other crew members, and his main objective gets switched, and he's going to be trying to get this alien on board or try to capture it, or try to bring it back, to study it or experiment on or whatever. So whenever you see him in this movie as Rook, you kind of already know what his intentions are. You know what his objective is. You know this is probably not going to turn out well for anybody that tries to side with him. Which kind of takes you out of it immediately. I think they could have just went with another person or an unknown actor or somebody else. Any other, android or synthetic could have fit this role because you wouldn't have known what their intentions were. Not only that, just the effect itself really takes you out of the movie. I think it really works well the first time you see him because it's half lit. There's a lot of shadows around him and whatnot, and it kind of makes it a little spookier because you don't know who it is and whatnot. I don't know. I think that would have worked a lot better. I think you could have kind of maybe kept Ian Holm in there as that character if you would have kind of not shown his face as much because man, that AI like deep fake or whatever they did, it didn't look great for a majority of the times that you see it. It looks very, very wonky and weird. And I know that they had like an actual like practical effect and that they kind of touched up with CG, but it really kind of takes you out of the movie and it really looks awkward compared to everything else you see in the movie because everything else looks fucking amazing. I mean, the planets, the space, all the effects with the ships, they look fantastic. And then you have this one effect with Ian Holmes' face that just looks very weird and wonky that kind of takes you out of the whole thing. Um, Now I definitely feel that it wasn't needed. I can understand from a story standpoint why it may have been his specific model because there were synthetics that looked the same, that were the same model throughout the alien universe. I can understand it from a story standpoint of what they were trying to do, but Ian Holm being in this movie doesn't carry the story any further than it would with an unknown actor or somebody else. It doesn't have a different effect. Now, I'm not definitely against it. It just I feel like they kind of could have did it differently to kind of not taking you out from the movie. Now, in my spoiler-free review, I really talked about how much I love the dynamic between Rain and her brother, synthetic brother Andy. Andy was really one of the best parts of this movie because I mentioned like David Johnson really went all out. He is fantastic in this movie. Now, and of course, in my spoiler free, I didn't get into why that is. Of course, because he ends up taking like that little chip from Rook and putting it himself, and then he kind of uploads Wayland Yutani's directives and objectives into himself. So he becomes like a different person throughout like the middle of the movie here, which is very interesting because you have a different dynamic with Rain as the main character and all the other characters in the movie. And it really hits you in the feels, it hits you in the motions because he's pretty much like the only family that Rain has left in the world. And to see him kind of not like turn on her, but become a different person. It really hurts. It's really emotional because you can kind of put yourself in Rain's shoes that like someone's just like immediately turns into a different person. They're not the same person that they were, that the same person that you really love and care for. He turns into a basic bitch, synthetic AI, like no emotions, all about objective type shit. So I think that really what cements the emotion in this movie, and that's really what worked for me, and that really what makes David Johnson's performance stand out overall. One thing I also kind of alluded to and mentioned in my spoiler-free review was the aliens themselves. As you see in the trailer, and of course the spoiler review, there's a bunch of aliens in this movie. There's a bunch of Xenos, a bunch of face huggers, and the face huggers really get their time to shine. You get to see a ton of fucking face huggers crawling all over the place. You really only get to see one person really get latched onto and have the whole, process happen with the chest burster and whatnot, which looked fantastic, by the way. The chest burster, it was awesome. It was a really great scene in this movie, especially with everything else that was happening around it at that time. Is so hectic in that scene. It just ratchets up that tension twofold. And with all these Xenos that you see in this movie, it really kind of makes you wonder, like, what were they doing when these kids first hopped on the ship to begin with? Like, you would think as soon as somebody started coming on the ship, the aliens would come out to try to get them. They kind of wait a minute. I mean, they wait until after, the face huggers get out and then they have the chest burster come out. And you think that's going to be the only alien. And then, of course, there's tons of other ones because that ship was full of people at one point, as you find out, which is a whole plot point I wish that we would have been able to see. It kind of makes me wish that maybe they would have told that story before we got this movie in a way, because we only get to see a little bits and pieces of this because one of the main plot points of the movie is the beginning of the movie. You have the wreckage of the Nostromo that gets found, and then you find that the original alien from the original movie was still alive and cocooned itself to survive space. And Wayland Yutani was able to find it, bring it back to its ship, crack it open. And this really reminds me of The Thing. They find the alien in the ice, they bring it back, they unthaw it, and it's still alive and ends up killing everybody. Same exact thing with this. They bring the Xeno back to the ship, crack it open. It's still alive, goes on a rampage and kills everybody on the ship. We only get to see like one brief, like security footage type thing of that Xeno causing havoc. Whereas, like, that would have been a hell of an interesting movie to kind of open up on. It would have been interesting to have that kind of been the first part, like like maybe the first part of this movie or its own movie in general, and then the second movie would have been this story arc. I don't know, I just really wish we would have got to see a lot of what happened on that ship before these kids came in. But as you come to find, there are a lot more Xenos on this ship, along with a ton of face huggers. And with there being so many Xenos, you think they would have done a lot more with them, because it seems like the only reason there's so many on there is for that one specific scene in the movie where Rain is using the pulse rifle and just blasting them all. And then you have the zero gravity scene with the acid, which is fucking cool. I love the zero gravity aspect of the movie where it comes on for a little time and then it shuts off, and then comes on for a little time and then it shuts off. I feel like they didn't kind of utilize that enough throughout the movie. They set that up early and then they only utilize it really like one other time throughout the movie. But I really like that scene with the acid blood and she has to kind of maneuver herself around and even use the pulse rifle to blast to kind of push her way to get out of the way from the acid blood at certain points. But it seems like all the Xenos in the movie were just fodder for that one scene, because you only have like 5 or 6 main characters on this movie. You don't really need a ton of fucking Xenos causing havoc because there's only 5 or 6 people that can die. So I think, in my personal opinion, I only really would have made it one Xeno. You only really needed one Xeno, and then you really could have had an Alien Isolation type feel for this movie. And I mean, there's certain elements of Alien Isolation in this movie already, which are some of the best parts of the movie. I really wish they would have built upon that even further. And like I said in my spoiler review, I really wish they would have let some of these scenes breathe and have some of that atmosphere and creepiness of someone slowly crawling around, and then the Xeno drops down, is looking for them, and they have to stay quiet and they have to kind of maneuver around while this alien's walking around the ship. I would have loved to see like a whole movie of that, of these 6 characters trying to get away from this alien. And I understand that may be a little too much like the original. What was the point of having so many Xenos for a small group of kids and then you just kill most of them in that one scene anyway? I don't know. I just feel like it would have helped with the scary, with the creepiness and the horror aspect, and the tension aspect with having just one or two Xenos following these people around this whole ship, because most of the movie they're just trying to get from one end of the ship to the other. That way they can get out safely. And then you could have had one or two Xenos stalking them throughout the whole thing. And then you could have had elements of alien isolation through this. And I mentioned this in my spoiler free review. The way they get into the ship is through like the little circle porthole things that open up and they crawl through, and they're like these little skinny, you know, air ducts they have to crawl through, and you really think that's going to come back at some point. Like maybe they could have a tense scene with an alien crawling through there after somebody or something like that, or they're crawling through with like a motion tracker or something. I don't know. But that never comes up again. And I was just waiting for it. I was waiting for somebody to have to crawl through one of these little vents to get somewhere. And then like they're terrorized by a Xeno, or even the thought of a Xeno being in there with them. It could have been a fake out or something. I feel like they were so preoccupied with forcing all these elements from all the other movies into this one film instead of kind of making this kind of be paced a little bit better for the amount of characters that you have, if that makes any sense. I mean, once the action gets going, it really gets fucking going. It's adrenaline filled once it picks up, but it kind of leaves you a lot of questions because there's some fucking heavy plot armor for some of these characters in this movie, specifically with these face huggers who are so fast and latch onto people's faces so quickly. That one specific scene, which it is tension filled, mind you, where they have to slowly sneak through. This is where you find out that the aliens are actually like find people based on heat and by sound, which I don't believe that you really knew about before. Obviously, the sound, but I don't think we really knew about that they kind of went by heat signature either. So they have to turn up the temperature in the one room. That way they can sneak by. And boy, they really, once shit hits the fan quickly and they have to run out, you would think one of these face huggers would be able to latch onto somebody, and it certainly doesn't. There is some plot armor for some of these characters throughout the movie. One of my points is like you have only 5 or 6 characters. What was the point of introducing all of these aliens other than just that one scene where she's just blasting all of them, you know? To me, what I would have done at least was like, as soon as they start activating all these, computers and panels on this, abandoned ship, it would have been interesting for like Wayland Utani to get pinged to be like, hey, one of our like disabled ships just came back online. What's going on here? Let's send a search party up. And then that gives you a reason to have more kind of cannon fodder in a way, some more red shirts. You could have had some Wayland Utani goons come up to investigate, what's going on in this ship that suddenly became activated by these kids. And then you could have had a reason for all these aliens to come out and take out some of these Wayland Utani soldiers or whatever. You could have had more cannon fodder. You could have had more kills. You could have had more, craziness, some action packed scenes instead of just having that one specific scene where she's just blasting all these aliens. I feel like there's a lot of potential to be had with as many aliens that you have there in this movie. They just didn't utilize them very well. And that was really my complaint with it, because like you either have a ton of aliens and then you have some more people for them to kill, or you only have 5 or 6 kids. Let's just make it one or two aliens. How about that? I don't know. It just seems like they didn't really plan the movie very well. I feel like they planned the overall story of how they wanted it to go as far as like Rain and Andy. I just feel like the middle of the movie, they were just trying to find any way they could to fit, references to other movies or to make them feel like other movies. Like that scene where she's just blasting the Xenos, that's easily the aliens part of the movie, the aliens action sequence of the movie. You're just blasting Xenos. The whole first half is pretty much just the original Alien. That slow, suspenseful, tense filled, scenes that are drawn out. And those are the scenes I like them best. And that's probably why I like the original Alien the best out of all of them. And I mean, I like that scene where she kills all the Xenos perfectly fine. I like that. I just wish there was more reason to have the Xenos in the movie than just that. And speaking of, references or callbacks to other movies, we got to talk about the ending too. You got to talk about the ending where you have, of course, the one girl, I forget her name, unfortunately, whose only real character trait in this movie was just being pregnant, which, of course, is something bad's going to happen when somebody is pregnant. She ends up injecting herself with the black goo from Prometheus, which, listen, I'm a Prometheus fan. I like Prometheus. So I was 100% happy with them cementing the Prometheus lore into the Alien canon overall, because they could have easily retconned the prequels out of existence. But they really kind of doubled down by introducing the black goo from Prometheus back into this movie. So I was 100% down for that. You know that she was going to get injected with it, or she was going to inject herself, and something was going to happen to that baby. We got to see what happened in Prometheus, got impregnated by somebody with the black goo. So in this one, we got to see the black goo that was pulled from the Xeno injected to somebody that was already pregnant and see what happens there. And what happens is you get an engineer Xeno hybrid alien, which the design was pretty fucking creepy, like a tall, slender man type build with that weird long tail, and it had like the engineer head with like the weird mouth fangs and stuff. It was very interesting. It was very creepy. I did not expect them to go that route whatsoever with this movie. It was definitely very creepy and effective, especially the birthing scene was super gross. I wouldn't say it's nearly as gross or as Prometheus or anything like that, but it was definitely very disturbing when you see like the mother of the being start like lactating the black goo and stuff. And then it's insinuated that he's like breastfeeding off of her when Rain comes into the room and shit. It's very weird, and there's a lot of weird implications in there that's just gross, and it's like it's more gross to think about than actually seeing it in the movie. But I was actually all for it. I know a lot of people had problems with the third act of this movie. They didn't like that aspect because it kind of is a callback to Alien Resurrection. You have that humanoid Xeno at the very end. That is, I still think that movie, I still think that one is effective because of how creepy and scary and eerie looking it is. The movie overall just isn't that great. It is, I find it fun, but overall as a movie, it's just not great. Whereas this one, I feel like the writing and the movie is pretty damn good, and I think they accomplished what they wanted to with the ending of this movie, with that hybrid Xeno engineer thing, and also cementing further that Prometheus is canon in here because it's an engineer Xeno. And it really makes me want to see that third part of David's trilogy that Ridley Scott was building. And I'm hoping that this kind of draws interest towards that. So maybe Ridley Scott will go back and make that third part to kind of close that chapter and kind of lead into how that ship got, stranded on LV 426 and whatnot, and go from there. And that's what I talked about in my spoiler free was I like the elements in the movie that have implications through the rest of the series, like the black goo showing up and them extracting it from that Xeno, and being able to create all those face huggers, and it being able to create an engineer Xeno hybrid, or just having that little cocoon process that we've never got to see before. Like after the chest burster comes out, we see that in this movie, like the big vagina on the wall with the alien in it. That's slowly getting bigger. We never got to see that in any of the other alien movies. And I thought that was super interesting how the face hugger just comes out, it kind of sheds its skin, and then it forms like a little cocoon on the wall so it gets bigger, like a butterfly or some shit. We never got to see that, and I think that's very interesting. I like the new elements it introduces into the alien lore, and I really wish they would have drawn upon that throughout the rest of the movie, find some new things to do or introduce into the series instead of relying on a lot of the same shit we've seen for the past fucking 30, 40 years, you know? And speaking about like 30, 40 years, they didn't really need to introduce quotes from the original movies into this one either. Like, that's a little too far as member berries go. Like, you have Rook saying, I can't lie about your chances, you have my sympathies. I saw that coming a million of miles away. It kind of worked for me because it worked in the situation that they were in the movie, but I saw it coming. It wasn't nearly as cringy as later in the movie when you have Andy kill a Xeno and he says, stay away from her, you bitch. And it's like, what? Why? Like, you could have just left it at stay away from her and it would have been fine. But like, you really had to finish the exact quote from that Ripley had in Aliens. Like, what would have made you say that? Like, Andy wasn't really swearing or doing any of that shit earlier in the movie. Why would he say that now? Type of thing. I don't know. There's certain other quotes in there that were brought up. And it was like, this is just so forced in here. I'm not sure if this was like studio interference or what. I just can't see Fede Alvarez doing something like that because he didn't do that with Evil Dead, which was interesting. He didn't do a lot of that. There were certain references and callbacks to the other Evil Dead movies, but he didn't go as far as like just inserting just the same quotes or, all these member berries from other movies. Like, oh, you remember this? You remember this? You remember this? it wasn't like that. So it makes me feel like it wasn't Fetty's decision overall to insert a lot of this stuff in there. I feel like it was a lot of studio meddling in there. And I'm sure he's not going to say that. I'm sure the studios aren't going to say that. But it just feels like there's a lot of stuff that was just kind of shoehorned and forced in there just for the sake of fan service, you know? And that's why I'm hoping we kind of do get a sequel to this in a way. And I'm hoping Fede Alvarez returns to direct because I would love to see him have full creative control over an Alien movie to do exactly what he wanted to do without anybody kind of inserting their own ideas in there. I know Ridley Scott was producing on this movie. I'm not sure on how much say he had in there at certain times. I'm not sure if he's the one that kind of told him to insert some of the, Prometheus engineer shit in there, which is kind of the stuff I liked. I don't know. It just feels like there were a lot of stuff that was shoehorned in there and it does take you out of the movie. I'm not going to go as far as to say that it ruins the movie by any means. I don't think it does. It just definitely kind of throws you off a little bit when you hear a lot of that. Like I'm cool with some of the throwbacks. Like you have like the little watering bird thing that you see towards the beginning of the movie. That's fine. Even the game over man thing on the one arcade is it's pushing it, but it's fine. But yeah, those are some of my thoughts as far as spoilers go for the movie. This was, I'm such a huge fan of the Alien franchise and Alien movies in general that like I have a lot of love for these. So I definitely wanted to go out and talk about the spoilers and talk about the movie overall. Cause normally I just do either spoiler free reviews or I do half and half, like non spoiler, spoiler reviews. But I feel like as a movie as big as like Alien, as the Alien franchise, I had to do a separate spoiler review for it. Just that way I can really talk about in depth about what was happening, especially with all the kind of the controversy and divisiveness about a lot of the stuff in here as far as like Rook's character and the third act with the engineer Xeno baby and whatnot. I feel like there was definitely a lot to talk about here, and I definitely wanted to give my opinions on that. But overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I actually really can't wait to watch it again. I don't know if I'm going to be going to the theaters to see it again. I'll probably wait until it comes out on Blu-ray or 4K to scoop it and watch it at home. I love the look of the movie. It looks fantastic. They really put their heart and soul into making an alien movie feel like an alien movie. It really puts you in that time and place. Like it really, I love the aesthetics. I love the look of the spaceships and the technology. The cinematography is fucking amazing. How they designed some of the ships, the shots and the landscapes, and like even the planet that's just all dark at the beginning of the movie where they come from, the mining planet. It looks amazing. It kind of looks like something out of Blade Runner or something like that. I feel like a lot of people have some issues with this movie, and granted, there are some issues. I have nitpicky things with it. Does have its problems, but overall, I think it was a very solid movie. And as far as alien flicks go, it's easily top three. It's right after Alien Aliens. It's easily the best out of the other sequels. I'm looking forward to watching it again. I'm also looking forward to see what Fede Alvarez does next. Whether it's another Alien sequel. He was also talking about how he would love to do like an Alien versus Predator type like movie in the vein of like the grindhouse flicks that I did a review of with Alex a year or so ago, where him and his buddy, I think it was Dan Trachtenberg, who directed the Prey movie, he would direct the Alien version and Dan Trachtenberg would direct the Predator version, and then they would kind of meet in the middle. I think that's an awesome idea if they went forward with that, but I think they should put a couple movies in between leading up to those at some point. After all these years, we're finally starting to get possibly good Predator and Alien movies. I want to enjoy them. I want to have multiple sequels and enjoy these singular Predator and Alien movies before you start combining them to make Alien versus Predator again. I want another couple Alien movies leading up to it. That way we can enjoy that universe and these fucking monsters, going forward and just kind of evolving on them. There's so many different forms of Xeno now, whether it's in movie canon or the comics, they can introduce into the movie canon. There's so much stuff and so much potential within that universe. I'm really looking forward to see how they build upon that. We do have that Alien Earth show, I think it's called, that's coming out on FX or Hulu next year, I believe. That's set even before all the movies. Who knows how that's going to go? I'm sure I'll review that at some point. But, I'm just hyped that, Alien is finally back kind of in the limelight, is getting attention again. And, this movie made a ton of money. It made all its money back in profits from its opening weekend. So I'm sure there's going to be a sequel that gets greenlit at some point. It's just a matter of, whether Fede Alvarez is coming back to direct it or not. Fingers crossed that he does, and fingers crossed that he has full creative control over it going forward. But those are my spoiler thoughts on Alien Romulus. I'm sure there's some stuff that I missed, but let me know what you all thought about the movie in the comments below, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. I'm interested in hearing what everybody thought about it, because I know I've seen what everybody thought about it on social media, but I'm interested in hearing what you all thought about the movie, everybody that watches the channel, because we're all in this together. I appreciate everybody for watching the channel and supporting the channel. So I would love to hear your thoughts. And on another note, for anybody that has any suggestions on what movies you want reviewed in the future, definitely leave those in the comments below as well, or hit me up on social media of what movies you want to see me in review in the future. I would definitely love to take some suggestions. I am going to be having some guests on here in the future, one coming up here within the next week or so. I'm not ready to announce that as of yet, but stay tuned for that. But I'm open to any and all suggestions for what movies you all want to see me review on the channel, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. But with that being said, that is my spoiler review for Alien Romulus. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. As always, make sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Also, where you get your podcast, drop in and leave us a good review there as well. And I'll see everybody next week.